Listo. This is the real place. The guerrilla is near. Maybe 5 minutes walking, no more.
When you think of landmines, countries like Afghanistan, Sudan, Iraq, and other conflict areas around the world might come to mind. But Colombia is one of the most affected countries in the world too, because for the last 50 years there's been a roiling conflict between leftist Marxist guerrillas and the Colombian government. And even though there are peace talks happening right now in Havana, the legacy of decades of war are literally sown into the soil. So we came to Colombia to find out how this nation is dealing with this ongoing, violent, and brutal problem. Since 1990, there have been over 10,000 landmine victims in Colombia, the second most in the world behind Afghanistan. Many victims are poor farmers and ranchers who live in regions controlled by the guerrilla or other narco-trafficking groups that operate in the country. But the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, or FARC, has been the government's main enemy. And even after over $5 billion in US military aid, around 7,000 FARC soldiers are holding off over 300,000 Colombian troops by surrounding themselves with landmines, their strongest line of defense. FARC has been around for 5 decades, and what began as a Marxist people's army fighting against capitalist imperialism has devolved into a guerrilla force that threatens the very people it originally sought to protect, because of the thousands of landmines they've buried in civilian areas.
Es el terror que forma las FARC en los campos colombianos, colocando minas al lado de las escuelas, al lado de las trochas, al lado de los caminos por donde pasa la población civil. Los bandidos han encontrado en las minas un asesino enterrado, un asesino muerto, que queda por siempre hasta que algún hombre de las fuerzas militares o de la población civil lo activen.
Over the last 6 months, FARC leaders have been negotiating peace with Colombia's government. But even as they talk about ending hostilities, there's no ceasefire in place. These negotiations could yield a transformative moment in Colombian history. The government is even trying to rebrand the country as a vacation destination, not just a hotbed of violence. But the scars of 50 years of war and 50 years of landmines can't be so easily erased. Victims of the conflict, who have lived with war for most, if not all of their lives, have little faith in the peace process. We're headed to Florencia, which is in the southern region of Caquetá. Caquetá is a red zone, an active combat area that since the late 90s has not only been a stronghold of FARC, but has also been infiltrated by right-wing paramilitary groups too. So we're going to meet civilians who have been caught between the crossfire and have been victims of landmines. Landmines can be found all over Colombia, especially in the country's 3 mountain ranges and dense jungle, where the guerrilla like to hide out. Many of these areas can only be accessed from a single point of entry, so all it takes is one set of landmines to protect hundreds of acres of territory and foil any army advances.
This kind of geography, if you have Amazon, if you have Atlantic coast, if you have Pacific coast, this kind of complexity is what made the country been in war for more than 2 centuries.
Ignacio Gomez is an investigative journalist who's been reporting on the conflict for over 20 years. He's been targeted for assassination 5 times, including a personal threat from cocaine kingpin Pablo Escobar. And even he thought it was crazy that we were heading to Florencia.
I am advised not to go to red zones. Florencia is one of the hottest places of the country.
It sounds scary. You're making me scared to go there.
Yeah, you have to be scared. You have to be alert to go there.
Caquetá is one of Colombia's most dangerous regions because coca production has shot up there by 80% over the last few years. It's basically FARC land, and what's more, drug cartels and their militias control much of the region as well.
Cuando yo iba pasando esto, vi algo y pues me acerqué a mirar, ¿no? Y pues a lo que me acerqué, pues yo sentí una explosión y me caí y ahí me desmayé y después Eso no me querían traer al médico porque que ahí había guerrilla por ahí en ese sector. Como a los 8 días me llevaron al hospital y pues yo tenía gangrena en el pie. Tenía 9 años. Me hace difícil y pues casi la gente no me da trabajo por mi discapacidad. Me preocupo mucho porque ellos pues, son mis hijos y pues en parte yo no he podido darle una vida mejor.
In Colombia's remote areas, it takes hours to get proper medical care for major trauma, and the risk of infection for landmine wounds is high, especially because many of these landmines are homemade bombs, filled with things like feces and battery acid. So if you're lucky enough to survive a mine blast, you'll likely suffer lasting effects of the injury.
Yo me encontré una pila. Mauricio me dijo, ay, tirémoslos al río. Yo le dije, no, dejemos mejor quieto ahí. Y Mauricio cogió una piedra y se la tiró.
O sea, cuando miré una humarada, arena y hojas que se levantaron. Todo cambió porque yo no, ya es mi hija ya.
Me montaron el potrillo y duré media hora para arriba en el potrillo. Y tuvimos 3 horas en moto y en San José.
Entonces, esto es terrible.
Tengo, digámoslo así, tripas plásticas, el intestino como que me falta y el hígado me falta también, 100%.
Ya Jamie muy valiente.
Yeah, she's very brave. How does she feel now?
Jamie muy alegre.
Yesterday, we met a few landmine victims in Florencia, and one thing they all shared in common was that they were displaced by the violence. After they stepped on landmines, they moved out of the countryside to the relative safety of the city. But today, we're going to head into the guerrilla-controlled countryside of Caquetá to meet a few landmine victims who are still living in an active combat area. Colombia counts 3.7 million internally displaced people and 380,000 refugees that have fled the country entirely, giving it the dubious honor of having the highest number of displaced people in the world, beating out countries like Afghanistan and Syria. Entering FARC-controlled areas is risky, especially for journalists. Our driver charged us double and would only spend a few hours out there. He refused to stop the car for more than a few minutes. We met up with FRANCISNEY, who lost his leg on the side of the road years ago.
En este sitio había un retén de las FARC. Yo me orillé exactamente este cerco a orinar.
Ajá.
A orinar cuando iba bajando exactamente aquí en este sitio donde me encuentro parado, pisé una mina antipersonal y caí en la mitad de la carretera. Cuando los integrantes de las FARC escucharon la explosión, se vino a prestarme los primeros auxilios. Ese día, en este sitio por aquí más o menos, había otra mina antipersonal. La rebelde sufrió una amputación bilateral. En vez de prestar los primeros auxilios, la asesinaron delante de todos los que vamos aquí en el retén.
So can you show us your leg, the prosthetic you have?
Nunca me imaginé que a mis 24 años me convirtiera en una de las miles de víctimas inocentes del conflicto armado a causa de las minas antipersonales.
A week later, we learned that a soldier lost his leg by stepping on a landmine that was just feet from where we were.